In the past few weeks, the news surrounding COVID and the cruise industry has come as a whirlwind. At the start of December, things looked relatively stable. Ships were returning, and cases, while definitely still found on cruise ships, they didn't go very far thanks to vaccines and testing. What a difference a month can make. With the rise of the Omicron variant on land, cruise ships are being impacted as well, despite having some of the most rigid protocols in all of travel. But there's a lot happening that you may not realize surrounding this new variant and cruises. Here is what you need to know right now. Let's start with the absolute basics, which is that cases are rising at sea. Sure, it has made headlines, but you may not know some of the data behind that rise. This all starts with the CDC's daily color status report. Each day, more than 100 ships sailing in the US, they provide the CDC with data regarding potential or confirmed cases on the vessel. The color status report then assigns a color to each ship based on these daily health reports. Ships can be green, orange, yellow, or red. Now, in mid-December, there was a low point of about 24% of ships seeing possible cases, which can be as little as one case, and then being a color other than green. By the end of the month, however, that figure spiked to 85%. As of now, 94 of 110 ships tracked in the report are non-green. And from December 15th through the 29th, the agency said that there were 5,013 coronavirus cases on ships, according to the Washington Post. That's about 330 cases per day. A big part of the return to sailing has been the implementation of protocols to keep cases off ships in the first place, and then to limit spread if cases do make it on board. The cornerstones of these policies are requiring vaccines, negative tests before boarding, and then contact tracing on the ship if a case is found. Even though cruises returned in late June, right as the Delta wave began to hit, cases were relatively low. According to the data released by the CDC between June 26th, when cruises first started back, and October 21st, there were 1,359 cases found on ships. That might sound like a lot, but it comes out to roughly 12 cases per day across hundreds of thousands of passengers and crew that are sailing. Now, we don't get regular data on case counts. The CDC doesn't release anything regularly, nor do the cruise lines. Instead, numbers are released here and there when an outbreak makes headlines, or the CDC or the cruise lines provide something. With the rise of Omicron, Royal Caribbean Group released some stats regarding cases on its ships. According to the company, it has now carried 1.1 million guests since cruising restarted in the US, with about 1,800 people testing positive on its ships. It's a positivity rate of about 0.2%. Of course, that comes with all sorts of caveats. For one, it's not clear when the end date for that measure occurred or if crew are included in that count. Second, since not everyone is tested while on the ship, there might be more cases that did go undetected. And we don't know how many of these cases popped up since Omicron came into the picture. Even so, given the sheer number of passengers, that is a low number of positive tests. The CDC has provided oversight for cruises since the pandemic began. While cruises paused voluntarily, the CDC kept them paused for more than a year and put in the rules and the regulations that must be followed to return. That's why it was huge news recently when the agency moved its advisory for cruising to level 4, its highest level possible. With this move came a warning that the public should avoid cruise travel even if vaccinated. The CDC also said that if you were still planning to sail, you should be vaccinated and have a booster if eligible. When the CDC, which gives oversight to the cruise industry as it returns, says that people should avoid cruise travel even if they have the shot, that is a major red flag. It begs the question of if cruising will be paused again, similar to what we saw back in March 2020. Adding pressure, one US Senator, Richard Blumenthal, has called for cruises to pause sailings, referring to them as petri dishes. At this point, we just don't know what will happen. My opinion leans toward no pause, but I certainly would not take the possibility off the table. So far, cruises have continued to sail. If there was a pause, however, it's unlikely it will be for very long. Cruises have shown the ability to keep cases in check, while in places like South Africa, the Omicron variant spikes quickly before cases begin falling. We just have to hope that the same pattern plays out around the rest of the world. While pausing the entire cruise industry would be a major step, that doesn't mean zero disruption. With cases on ships, some ports of call are denying the ability for ships to dock. Before a ship is given the okay to go ahead and dock and let off passengers, they will submit details surrounding the health status of those on board. A few ports have not allowed ships with a higher number of cases to come in and let passengers off. Other ports have said that cruise passengers must take a COVID test before heading into port, which turns into a logistical nightmare. In other words, if you are planning to sail in the next several weeks, do not be surprised if your itinerary sees some adjustments based on the ever-changing conditions on the ship and the requirements in the port of call. Right now, the only consistent way we have to know about possible cases on cruise ships is with the CDC's color status report, but that could be coming to an end. Starting January 15th, the CDC's OVERSIGHT program is set to expire and become voluntary. It's not entirely clear what that will look like or if it even happens. The CDC's orders could be extended as they have before, especially given the rise of the Omicron variant. But if the program does move to voluntary, it's not clear if the daily color status report will continue. To be sure, I'd expect cruise lines to continue to enforce heavy protocols like vaccines and testing. In fact, the CDC's program is already voluntary for ships sailing from Florida, but ships continue to follow the procedures and be tracked by the CDC. One last thing to know is that at this point, you should expect more protocols in cruising. Already, things like mask requirements when indoors have been put into place. Norwegian Cruise Line, which had planned to move from testing at the terminal before boarding to requiring passengers to test on their own before arriving, has now extended to testing at the pier. Do not be surprised if more protocols are put in place. So what could that mean? A few options the cruise lines have are to require booster shots of anyone who is 6 months past their original shots. Another could be universal testing at the pier, and maybe even requiring kids 5 to 11 to sail vaccinated. To be sure, these haven't been put in place just yet, and they may never be. But in the battle to keep pace with the virus, additional protocols may be needed. So what's the bottom line with all of this? Like on land, the new variant is causing issues at sea. More ships are being impacted. At the same time, so far the cases being found seem to be more mild, which is great news. If you have a cruise coming up soon, don't be surprised if there are changes to the itinerary or to the protocols on board. Lastly, this entire situation is moving quickly, and with that, it's the hope that things will also calm down more quickly than in previous waves. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy cruising.